Hey there, it's Jules Wong from Pocketnow, and when we recorded the show this week, we didn't expect the software to completely tear apart the news summary section, which is why you won't be seeing it on this week's YouTube version, but it is available on the full audio version. At Pocketnow.com, there will be a link in the description. But we did want to share some video with you, at least. So, fortunately, we have our conversation with Evan Rogers. He's social media manager for Engadget, and he wrote up and dished out that little critique of Galaxy S8 reviews that we've been talking about. So, that should be an interesting conversation. But before we get to that,
I think we need to take a moment to thank our sponsor. I think that would only be appropriate for the continued production of this podcast. And that sponsor is, of course, Blue Apron. Now, just because you're busy, that doesn't mean you don't have time to put together interesting meals using high-quality ingredients. Blue Apron takes the guesswork out of cooking, delivering the exact amounts of food you need for each recipe. We've been using it, and when they say you need one potato, you get one potato for that recipe. All of those ingredients, meats and vegetables, are sourced ethically using sustainable sources, and they're often very close to you, supporting local farmers in your area. Meals are delivered to 99% of the continental United States, and the costs are under $10 per serving. Now, some of the meals available this month: lemongrass burgers and cabbage slaw, seared chicken and creamy couscous, and a spicy pepper and ricotta calzone. That one I'm really excited to try. Now, those all sound super fancy, but each item comes with a menu card to walk you through the recipe step by step with full color photos. Putting together rich, flavorful meals should not be stressful or intimidating. Each week, you can customize your menu to fit your particular tastes and dietary restrictions, including vegetarian options. And Blue Apron has an extensive collection of recipes, so subscribers won't encounter the same meal twice over the course of a year. Cooking together can help improve family bonds, and Blue Apron families cook together 3 times more often. I do. I keep my my little daughter Lex. She stays in the kitchen while I'm putting food together, if it's Blue Apron or not. But the Blue Apron meals are really fun because she likes to play with the recipe cards while I'm trying to read what my next step is. So it's a fun way to bond over food while we're also singing her favorite Muppet and Disney songs. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free by going to blueapron.com/pocketnow. Once again, blueapron.com/pocketnow, and we thank them for supporting the Pocketnow Weekly.
Let's not waste any time and get straight into the new Samsung Galaxy S8.
The Samsung Galaxy S8.
The Samsung Galaxy S8.
Samsung Galaxy S8.
S8.
The S8.
S8. S8.
Galaxy S8.
S8.
The S8.
S8.
Talking about everything you need to know about
The Galaxy S8.
But before I can talk about how great this phone is, I have to answer the question that everyone is thinking.
Would it be too much to say that the Galaxy S8 is the best Android phone of the year?
So moving on to a segment I'm very excited about is we've got a sit-down, a conversation here. Joining us on the podcast is Mr. Evan Rogers. He's the social manager, the social media manager at Engadget. Do I have that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Good. And he recently produced a really provocative video, starting a conversation, taking a look at the state of smartphone technology reviewing on the YouTubes in the year 2017. I'm really happy that you could join us on the show. And this is a video that spurred a lot of conversation amongst individuals like us, the content producers on YouTube, the people that are really trying to dig into these smartphones and tablets, the sort of consumer electronics space. And so I wanted to start off first because you currently work at Engadget. You came from The Verge. Now, was it at The Verge that you became a Samsung hating anti-Android shill, or was that something you learned?
Oh no, I
picked
that up over time. Yes. No,
okay,
not
good,
at The
good,
Verge.
good.
Not at The Verge.
So anti-Android people are made, not born, is what you're saying.
Yes, I would actually. We're joking, but I would agree with that on some level.
I'm absolutely joking. Yes, completely being facetious. No, really, I wanted to jump in first. This to me was a very honest video. I mean, we don't get these kinds of conversations very often on our side of this business. I felt this was a very heartfelt video, and I felt this was a very scathing look at kind of where we find ourselves in information versus entertainment. And I was really hoping you could maybe elaborate on just where you were personally when you were thinking about putting this video together, like how you came to this place where this was a conversation you really wanted to have.
Yes, so, sure. So, I mean, before I was at Engadget, I was doing some consulting specifically on like just media company YouTube management. So like just how do you run your YouTube channel as a media company? And while I was doing that, I've really found that a lot of media companies kind of hit the same wall, which is that they're under a lot of different constraints when it comes to how they produce video, even just generally, right? Mm-hmm. But once you kind of enter the reticle of technology journalism, and then beyond that, even smaller into the reviews game, then you've got, kind of a lot of things playing into your workflow. And basically, I was trying to figure out a good way to provide commentary on basically those constraints. It also didn't hurt that I was like working on I was working and researching for the Engadget channel and just like looking at all the embargoes that went up, and it was just like, oh my gosh, all these videos are the same. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I guess like the follow-up to that was, so there wasn't really anything unique necessarily about like the Galaxy S8 launch as a phone. It was more that just the timing had kind of come to a zenith where so many people were trying to accomplish the same thing under the same constraints and independently. That means we all kind of arrive at the same quality of discussion.
Right. And so it's really, I mean, first and foremost, the very first thing that I should say is that, I know a lot of people that do reviews, and like I can't emphasize it enough that it is so hard to write them. Then beyond that, it's very time consuming to compartmentalize and compact your written review into a script. And then from there, you have to get the video shot. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about, was less the kind of creative liberties that reviewers are taking and more about the constraints that like lead to this place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm actually really glad that you brought it up that way. It's something that I've noticed as a significant shift in the discussion, the commentary. When I started reviewing, actually I started by reviewing recording equipment and then sort of broadened into consumer electronics. But when I started, it was all about writing 3,000, 4,000 words on a product. And then you would have this terrible YouTube video of these disembodied hands molesting a gadget for 2 minutes. And that was your coverage. And, even for the Inside Baseball at Pocketnow, when we're getting ready to publish a review, the major focus initially is on that video. And then a couple days later, like I'm in the process of writing the full Galaxy S8 Plus review that's going to go up on our site as a text piece that we can get into even just a little bit more granular details on the usage of this phone. But the primary focus was pushing that video forward, was pushing that video out first. So I guess, just in kind of for our audience, you produced this video, and I think it was the intro to your discussion here that I think perked a lot of eyebrows, that really got a lot of people's attention as you were doing these really aggressive cuts between the various popular YouTubers talking about this phone and all kind of landing on the same bullet points.
Then there's the camera.
Taking a look at the camera on the Galaxy S8, it is the same as the last year, so...
it has the same specs, no dual cameras like some of its rivals.
Honestly, you're not going to see too much of a difference here in the rear camera. That's not really a big deal, though, because they were great to start with.
The first thing I think someone would ask is, like, was there a lot of editing involved in that? Or were you going through these videos seeing, like, well, this is the section that everyone seems to talk about here, and this is the section that everyone seems to talk about here, and this is like straight out of the reviewer's guide that Samsung supplies to all of these individuals?
So, no, so first off, I've actually never seen the press materials for the Galaxy S8. I have gotten to see the Galaxy S8 itself. I was at the event, but I've never seen the press kit. And if people don't know, for any new thing that comes out, that there's like, here are points that, like, you know, the company will send
the talking points memos.
Yeah. They'll be like, here's some things that you could talk about if you wanted, right? And that was actually not my point. Because I've never seen it and I have no idea what they sent, although we all know pretty much what they send in those things. But more, it was that I was watching a bunch of these and the language that everyone was using, you know what I mean? Like, when I cut on a specific word, like the camera or the word comfortable, like, it's not just that people are making the same points in an abstract way. Sometimes it's they're making points in, like, using literally the same language. And that is that's when I'm just like, that was the moment where I was like, what is happening? You know what I mean? And
yeah, no, so, I mean, your video actually generated a lot of discussion internally between the producers here at Pocketnow, because it's one of the things on our channel where we have very different styles for each of the producers. We don't really have kind of a unified sense of how reviews should be produced. And it was one of the reasons why they brought me on, was actually to try and shake up some of that commentary with some of the technical aspects of how we conduct phone reviews. So as I was watching through your video and seeing sort of like, you know, we've got the dolly shots, we've got like the same quality or insightfulness for some of the individual features of the phone. The Galaxy S8 served as a really sort of great platform for you to engage in this discussion. Was there any fallout? Like, you know, the tech community.
Oh, were people mad?
The tech reviewing community.
No.
Yeah, like, or no one like trying to throw you like a false DMCA or anything like that for utilizing
absolutely
footage.
not. So I was, first of all, I was, and I think that's totally fair. If someone wanted to slap me with like, hey, you used my video, I mean, the first thing I would say is that I've used this in a sort of editorial quality. But also, like, that's fair. Like, it's your video. I don't care. If you want to do that, go for it. But nobody has. And then also, like, there were people who definitely rendered some feedback, but most of it was very agreeable from, like, the actual tech community. There were some fans who were quick to point out that there are differentiated players on YouTube, and I don't disagree at all, actually. Like, you guys are one of them. But, you know, when it comes to the players who are winning, right? Like, and this conversation is deeply about YouTube and smartphone reviews and technology reviews on YouTube and the YouTube community.
Right.
It's, you know, the regular tech press is going through its own kind of whole thing, but, like, I work in that, so, like, that's not, like, something I'm really in a position to comment on. But when it comes to YouTube specifically, like, the feedback that I got, again, was really that trying to say that there are differentiated players out there, but that actually was my point, which is that places like Pocketnow, SuperSaf, Marquez, Unbox Therapy, they are so different than the traditional canonical review, right?
Right.
But there are, paradoxically, you know, in recent times, so many of them. I think that's really the point that I was trying to make, is that, like, there's nothing unusual about a YouTube, like a corner of YouTube where there are 4 to 5 big players. But what I do think is strange and questionably sustainable is when you have, you know, 20 to 30 creators who fundamentally have the same constraints, right? Like, you may receive a review.
It's difficult to have sort of, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's difficult to have like a differentiated voice when you're all working under very similar constraints, very similar time frames, kind of poking at the exact same product, and having to do that, I think, in the same way, because, you know, the audience is sort of expecting a certain level of cinematography. Well, that takes up time from really using the gadget to get to know it, to have that process. And so, I mean, I felt like that was really the biggest takeaway. I feel like we kind of dodged a bullet at Pocketnow because we weren't part of that embargo. So we didn't end up in your video. And in fact, your video on my Twitter channel actually kind of upset my Galaxy S8 Plus review when I was sharing your tweet. Like I was looking at the numbers, like your tweet trended better on my Twitter on my Twitter page than my review of the Galaxy S8 Plus did. So
well, I mean, that's no judgment. I mean, you guys are hitting straight, and I was kind of like offering a hot take, and that's the injustice of Twitter is that often the take was like, for whatever reason, more popular than the actual thing. But like,
well, but I felt like that really illustrated it personally. And one of the reasons why I was being genuine when I said, like, hey, from your video, there are definitely some things I feel I could learn from the discussion that you're starting here. It's the necessary evil. The Galaxy S8 reviews that were out prior to ours trended really well, hit really hard on YouTube, and we were late to that discussion. And just as you were mentioning in that video, commentary about the reviews was already starting to supersede the reviews themselves by the date we were able to publish our video. And that timing, I think, was really precious for us in seeing the practical application of what you were describing in your commentary.
Right. And this is the thing, if I had criticism for myself on this video, which as a creator you instantaneously do for anything you create, it's that there's a lot of points kind of here. And the very, one of the things that I would love to explore more in future videos or maybe another written thing is that there are like serious implications to waiting. Right? Like what I proposed was that like, taking the time to do something different, and that is great as an ideal. But at the same time, like for every hour that goes by that you don't have, your video up relative to people who hit at the exact embargo time, you're literally just losing money. Like there's no other way to put it. Like you're addressing your audience's needs, but when it comes down to, especially when you're competing with YouTube creators directly, it is actually like a revenue thing. If you choose to do this at a much later time, you must, simply by the nature of YouTube and the nature of like the audience network, like you have to provide incredible cinematography. You have to provide incredibly salient points. And it can definitely be done, but at the same time, you can put out kind of this like overview, this kind of glossy overview at the embargo time and reap a majority of the traffic, which is, again, like this is part of the system that I don't think leads to really incredible and differentiated work. I mean, everyone's stuff looks really good and they make very good points. But the reason why we have 30 reviews that look the same instead of 30 reviews that are wildly different and personal is because of this phenomenon, which is that you simply must post when everyone else posts in order to make that money or to gain that audience or to whatever.
Right. And we're actually on this very day that this is being recorded, we're kind of in the same boat again. BlackBerry just took the wraps off the Key 1, and that initial embargo push was really only enough time for people to put out sort of a hands-on or an unboxing or a first impressions video. And I mean, if your game, because I think we follow each other on Twitter, by the time we get to real reviews, I'd be willing to wager that the first 2 weeks of the 24 hours videos are going to significantly outperform the first 2 weeks of the actual knowledgeable reviews of the product when people have more time to actually spend with the gadget.
For sure. And that's the crazy thing too, which is that like, the audience segment, that like there is like, I would push back a little bit and say that there absolutely is an audience who is looking for that super deep dive, but that audience is much smaller. The ones that are both interested in that level of granularity and also patient enough to wait for that, or loyal enough to your publication to wait for your particular voice. It's just a smaller number than people who are like, yo, I just saw this Galaxy S8 thing or whatever, the Key 1 or whatever in trending and just watched it. Like right. That's so different. Like those audiences are completely different.
Well, and so this is a hypothesis that I've posited on previous podcasts. So I apologize to my listeners that I'm going to bring this up again. As technology has sort of become lifestyle, right? You know, like the geek inherited the earth, right? You know, you can't exist in modern society without gadgets. Which, you know, if I were to go back in time to high school and tell myself that, I would be over the moon. But as that transition has happened, my personal experiences in talking about this stuff, I kind of feel like the people who are consistently engaging with tech channels are doing so more to sort of confirm their notions on products and less to be educated about products, as many consumers have sort of picked the team that they're going to side with for what phone they use to get through the day.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that there are, for whatever reason, forces at work that are stratifying people amongst these things. But that may be the case. But also I think that, you know, that my opinion is more that phones are fashion. Like, technology is fashion.
Oh, totally.
And that, you know, people are more interested in being kind of involved in technology culture than necessarily at the intersection of a technology purchase decision, essentially.
Right.
Like, hell yeah. Like, I absolutely, actually the other day, I was really trying to find out if the Xperia XZS had like a textured back instead of a brushed back.
Right.
And like, I literally could not find this. Like, I could not, like, I looked at every review, like written review, because they have, you know, more high resolution photos. Looked at every 4K review. I'm like, I can't, like, I don't even want this phone, really. But like,
but Evan, the most important thing to know about that phone is the super slow motion mode. I mean, it's in the reviewer's kit.
Oh, listen,
it's way more important than the back material, right?
Can I just say that, like, I would just love a nice 240, 180, or sorry, 1080p at 240. I just don't care about 960 at 720. It looks like crap. But anyway, so like, I wasn't even at like a purchasing decision. I was more just like, what is this phone made out of? And like, you know, I that took me through like 7 videos. You know what I mean?
Right.
And first of all, like, you can't buy an Xperia in a store, but what attracted me to the Xperia is just how it looks, right? It just looks like to my eyes, it looks like a fashionable device. And that is what set me on a cascade of, you know, to be analytical or sterile with it, like a content consumption binge. But but I also think that like, what drives a lot of people, like what drives a lot of these audiences is somewhat the deep fan base, like the people who cruise Reddit's r/Android, the XDA people. But you do have a much wider swath of people that are really in it for the fashion and the culture, and those are the kind of like drive-by audience members that are the ones that will kind of hang out only as long as the like embargoes are up, really, you know, like on the embargo day.
Right. Well, and I've also found that those are often people that have probably already made their purchasing decision. So when I started reviewing gadgets, it really felt it was my job, because I had access. It was my job to help inform, where now the people that are most engaging, not necessarily the most number of views for a video, but the people who are most engaging with my videos are people that know just as much about the product as I have. And sometimes they've had the product longer than I've had it as a reviewer.
No, totally. Right. And they absolutely already know. They want to have like a discussion with you in the comments. And I actually love that. That's one of the best things about the YouTube community. But you're absolutely right. Like, those people are not at the crossroads of a purchasing decision where they need help. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're deeply involved in the kind of like, you know, and I think that this is something that reflects in the reviews too, which is that, you know, oftentimes reviews will take one or another kind of cut, right? Where sometimes reviewers will kind of get a little, in my opinion, They'll just get a little bit over involved with like the history of Samsung, or like this is how much the design has changed over the years. And you know, in reality, people are like, is it made of metal? Does the battery last all day? Will it explode if I drop it? And like, is the camera reasonably fine? And then other ones are like, other reviews are like, these are the benchmarks. Like, you can run a Wii U game on this. Like, you can't actually do that. Only GameCube and Wii games right now through the Dolphin emulator, but still.
But still, yeah, I mean, it's my favorite when someone does also like a RAM test. You know, like we loaded 30 apps into memory. And like, okay, that's awesome. No, I mean, like that's great. I've never done that.
There's an audience for that. That's like, you know what? And like seriously, there are like just like power user teenagers, I imagine, who are on some kind of like next level Instagram tip that need that.
So, I mean, it was a major point in your video because I mean, obviously, the major evidence in sort of what you were trying to illustrate in how these reviews can be similar was pulling content from major producers. But I was hoping that you could also maybe expand just a little bit on some of the ideas or some of the commentary for up and coming YouTubers. I mean, we get a ton of questions from people who are trying to find their own niche in discussing technology, in reviewing gadgets, or just trying to join the conversation. And I felt like you had some really important points to illustrate for that side of the business as well, that YouTube can feel really lopsided or top heavy sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple things there, and one of them I think is the major advantage that individual YouTubers can have over a publication is that the publication, for a lot of different reasons, needs to make a canonical thing because that's the way the website works. The website has, most websites, well, I shouldn't say that, the big tech, like generalist websites, they're going to have one review and a couple of breakout stories, right? And the nice thing is that an individual content creator, you can kind of take a few tacks, which is that like, the unbundling is what's up. Like people, okay, so like you have this canonical review where the reviewer can spend maybe 60 seconds on the camera, and even that is that's like a lot in video time.
Yeah.
You know, right? And like, instead of that, you know, that's just in a review like that, 60 seconds is such a huge budget for talking points. But, you know, there's no reason why you can't go so ham on the camera and create like a 10-minute video that covers everything you could possibly want to know, every scenario, every lighting situation, every camera mode. And like, yeah, you know, it's for the first, like if you decide to do this the first video, you're not going to get that many views because people are going to be like, you really like went deep. But people will come to know you and trust you for the individual, you know, perspective that you bring to it. And that's the thing, is that like, you know, don't get me wrong, Unbox and Marquez, they have beautiful cinematography, but A, they didn't always, and B, I think, you know, one of the crazy things about both of them is that you could actually listen to their video as audio in another tab, and it's still pretty enjoyable because what you're there for is really their personality. And I'm sure Marquez would hate that because he puts so much work into his visuals.
Those red cameras ain't cheap, son.
No, they are not. But that's the thing, is that like, in fact, I just last night actually, I was doing some like pre-pro for this call, and just like kind of grabbing some numbers here and there, and I forget, I really should have bookmarked this, but I lost the tab. It was like phone versus, and I think it might be phone versus phone, and this is just this kid. He's a young man who is just like doing stuff like walking around, and like this is the stabilization on the front-facing camera of these two models of phones, and like that's incredibly useful. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you are trying to decide whether or not to make a purchase, that kind of stuff is incredibly useful. Like, the problem is really balancing all these things, and YouTube is just not an ideal platform for doing that. You know what I mean? Like, if I am at a crossroads, if I am trying to buy something, like right now, I've got the Amazon tab open, right? I don't really care about the legacy of Samsung's design history. You know what I mean? I literally don't care.
I've seen. It was right before we were jumping in. I caught 3 different videos. Like, I forget, one of them was every single Samsung Galaxy S phone compared, or something like that. And it was like below another video that was accomplishing the same thing, and then another one where it was like S5 versus S6 versus S7 versus S8.
Right.
And
I
like,
mean,
I'm not really quite sure who that's for,
well, it's
other
for,
than
it can be
I
for
want to see
someone.
pretty images.
It can be for
Right.
someone, but like that's the thing is like YouTube is like, look, I encourage anyone out there, right? Like, do this little analysis right now. Look at publisher YouTubes, like for example, Bloomberg.
Mhm.
That company has more money than God, and like their YouTube channel is not that strong, right?
Right.
And the reason
Yeah.
is that like YouTube channels are A, often about personalities, but B, even more broadly, they're really about one thing well, like one thing done well. It's very just incredibly hard to have a channel where you do a bunch of different stuff and take off unless your personality is like so there. But you know, like I think Saf says in his channel trailer, like the thing that you land on his page, he literally positions his videos as something that you should watch before you buy something. And so like that kind of clarity, I think really works. And then also like, you know, like for, you know, the like Phil Nicholson and Michael Fisher, like they both are taking a very kind of particular angle on this sort of thing on YouTube, and look at their growth. I mean, like if you get on Social Blade, just look at how quickly they've been able to grow relative to, like I worked on the Verge channel for the first 2 years, right? And it was hard to make. It was like it was like pulling teeth to get that thing to like 300,000. You know what I mean? And they you know they're well on their way, if they, you know, and if not even beyond it now. So I mean, like there's definitely, to your original question about what individuals creators can do, you have a huge advantage over the big players. You know what I mean? So I would say like if you can find a voice for yourself and find a voice for what it is you seriously care about in terms of these technology devices, like you have the biggest leg up on publishers ever. And like if you're interested, then you should explore that.
Right on. Now, I know we've got to let you go here soon, but especially in kind of maybe Twitter stalking you for a little bit, especially over the last 24 hours. I wanted to change gears just real quickly, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but just to get your thoughts on the news that broke yesterday about Chairman Pai, Ajit Pai, and his public comments on the FCC's plans for ending net neutrality. And Engadget had some phenomenal coverage, as because some of our coverage can be a little boutique as it pertains specifically to, you know, smartphones, tablets, and wearables. I was just curious, like, what your thoughts were personally. I mean, also kind of pointing to some of Engadget's coverage, writing about those topics, tech and politics, definitely something that's going to be very, I think, passionate subjects for a lot of our respective audiences in the coming months and years.
Absolutely, of course. I mean, so first and foremost, you know, my opinions here are not reflective of the company I work for, et cetera, et cetera. Disclaimer. But
I'll just add myself to that too.
Yeah. But you know, you really should go read the thing that Terrence wrote. He had something up really fast, and he's a really good editor. You know, it's so you should go read that. But like, my opinion is this is completely bullshit. Like, you know, the idea that the market has performed well in existing levels of low regulation is just not factual and based in reality. Like, I don't know if you ever saw this in my backlog, but like when I lived in Tennessee, I didn't have access to internet, like as just a thing. And that was in December of last year. And yeah, we didn't have.
So you weren't in Chattanooga then?
No, I was not in Chattanooga, the most fiber-laden city in the world, apparently. But no, so I had to go out and get 2 T-Mobile like hotspots, and connected to the one tower that was like in my like outside of Nashville zone. That was my life, you know, and I was paying $200 a month to do that, to work and like live in the digital economy. So like to say that, you know, that deregulation is helpful for consumers, or that this I forget what the exact quote is, and I am going to misquote it, so I do apologize, but like whatever the quote was about energizing a disenfranchised base, like bro, I literally lived there. Like I literally lived there, and like I would tell you what would be energizing is like having affordable access to the internet. That would be energizing for my community when I lived back in Tennessee. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. You know.
Well, no, and I thank you for sharing that. It was I put out a little vlog on it and everything too. I'm trying to keep as much discussion on this as possible, because it's one of these topics that I feel is framed as a left versus right kind of debate. And even though I will proudly wear that bleeding heart on my sleeve, I'm still a capitalist. And I don't really feel this needs to divide people when we can point to data points that we could be doing better, and we could be better serving a number of communities. For example, apparently Tennessee still needs some help. And I know they just recently went through some legislation to dump more public money into infrastructure, but they're still preventing fiber rollout from leaving Chattanooga. So, you know, one step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps not taken,
yeah,
I guess.
2 steps, I don't know, some direction, eyes closed. Like, I don't think that this is a partisan issue. Like, nobody's going to align on party lines when the lines that people align on are ones mapped out by telecom providers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you have internet or you don't. And like the area around me in Tennessee was a very low income area. And you only had 2 practical options, right? Which was Verizon's wireless internet service, which is around $150 for 22 gigs.
Right.
And like when you combine low access in a low income area with a very, very high priced, you know, offering, like you are just exploiting people, you know, and then like,
well, and also I kind of feel like there is because I think this is an issue that I think my team, the left, has done a very poor job of acting as an opposition party in really trying to move the needle on progress for this kind of stuff. Because I also feel like we're leaving a ton of money on the table for a lot of these underserved communities and areas of the United States where they've been harder hit economically, or they're facing more significant job loss. Giving them access to information, improving healthcare through better connectivity, improving education through better connectivity, would only serve to give each and every single one of these populations, regardless of, you know, race or socioeconomic background or anything, would only serve to give them a more substantial leg up in a 21st century economy.
Right. I mean, well, there's some details here that I think shouldn't be overlooked, which are just that this is the outing of a plan. You know, this is not the law yet.
Correct.
And you know, at least we have the opportunity to provide comments. I need to like actually dig deeper into like specifically what was said in this meeting, because I've only had the opportunity to look at write-ups about it. But
I would highly recommend, there is a C-SPAN stream. I think it was yesterday at the Newseum in DC, like News Museum, the museum. It's about an hour long, and the opening comments are from a representative of FreedomWorks. So a lot of what you've been discussing from the write-ups is on point, because that's obviously what was said. But it was in my opinion, again, not representing Pocketnow directly, it was an interesting linguistic gymnastics display, as they were trying to conflate regulations in other industries, which may or may not actually stymie business progress, but then also trying to use this as a way to champion small business. And that to me became one of the big moments was, you're talking about a deregulation system, which would absolutely benefit, I think, the top players in this market. But I see no evidence to point to that would indicate that this would be better for that tiny little app developer or the next Netflix or whatever type of future internet service it's going to be really hot and use a lot of bandwidth, being able to compete fairly in a market like that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard because I really like haven't done the due diligence, but like that's kind of off the cuff just seems like silly town to me. I mean, my my undergraduate, you know, I studied econ, right? And like theoretically, if you're believing in all the Keynesian bullshit, sorry, I don't know if we can swear on this podcast. I really apologize.
It's okay. You know what? I mean, we mark this as adult. It's fine. Okay. I just try to maybe not drop a bunch of F-bombs.
Okay, fair. No, but I mean, like, you know, there's a delineation. It's true that in a lot of cases, you can get short-term growth by deregulating industries because they will invest. You know, they feel like the door is now ajar. We are free to run through it. And yes, you can definitely get some short-term gains out of that. But I'm not an economist, but you know, whether or not that actually benefits small companies that work on the internet as opposed to literally providing infrastructure for the internet, whether that provides benefits to consumers who are operating within a government-sanctioned monopoly or oligopoly, that like doesn't really stack for me. But again, like that's just my kind of like off the cuff. Like I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to also have to defer to. Well, and to me, I think evidence is sort of a key talking point there. But I along with you, I'll have to defer because you even have a leg up on me because I was a theater student in college, so I have even less business talking about the economy. Mr. Evan Rogers, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I felt your video was a very important discussion to have in a future economy. I mean, again, kind of coming back to the economics on this, where we've been empowered to create our own content. And so giving people that sort of insight, I felt was really beneficial to the discussion. Folks, everyone who's listening to this or watching the YouTube live stream, we're going to link this in our show notes too. You're going to want to check out Samsung Galaxy S8 Meta Review. If you search for that on YouTube, or if you look for Evan Rogers, his YouTube channel, where you can pick that up. And you can find Evan Rogers on Engadget. He's the social media manager for Engadget. And his Twitter handle, I mean, like, I'm super jelly of your little check mark there on Twitter at Evan Rogers.
It's very new, so you know.
I'm gonna see. Like, I've been trying to fill in the digital paperwork to get mine too. I want to join you there. But Evan, thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.